The days following the vote transformed Vareth Prime into something it had never been before. A place where humans walked freely. Sira stood at the entrance to the council chamber and watched as Admiral Yun Taejun descended from a shuttle, flanked by an honor guard of human soldiers in dress uniforms, their boots striking the deck in perfect unison. The representatives who had spent years pretending she did not exist now stepped aside to make room, their expressions ranging from fear to curiosity to something that might have been respect. "Ambassador Yoon?" Taejun said as he approached her, and she heard gasps from nearby delegates, who were only now understanding that the quiet human woman they had ignored for so long had been watching them the entire time. "Admiral," she replied. And then she embraced her uncle, because some moments were too important for formality. They entered the council chamber together, and Sira saw that the room had been rearranged to accommodate what was about to happen. Ambassador Kethrick sat in a containment field near the front, his silver skin dull and his eyes empty, waiting to be transported to face trial for crimes against humanity. Around him sat others who had been identified as architects of the cleansing, politicians and military commanders and intelligence officers who had planned and executed the destruction of Earth High Chancellor Vareth stood at the central platform, looking older and smaller than Sira had ever seen him. "We are gathered to formally acknowledge the crimes committed against the human species 47 years ago," Vareth said, his voice cracking with emotion that might have been shame. "And to begin the process of making what amends we can." Taejun stepped forward to address the assembly. "I will not pretend that words can heal what was done," he said. "I will not pretend that trials and treaties can bring back the 8 billion people who died on Earth or the millions more who were hunted down in the years that followed." He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that had once seemed so powerful and now looked merely tired. "But we can choose what comes next," he continued. "We can choose to build a galaxy where no species lives in fear of extinction simply because they are different, or because they grow too quickly, or because others are afraid of what they might become." Councillor Mavan rose from the Uravasi section. "I spent 47 years living with the knowledge of what we did," Mavan said. "I told myself that my single vote against the cleansing was enough, that I had done what I could, but I was wrong." The elderly councillor turned to face the human delegation. "I should have spoken out," Mavan continued. "I should have refused to serve on a council that could commit such an act. I should have done more than simply object and then accept the outcome. And I will carry that failure with me for whatever time I have left." Taejun nodded slowly. "Your regret does not undo what happened," he said. "But your willingness to acknowledge it now gives us hope that genuine change is possible." The formal proceedings continued for hours, with documents signed and agreements ratified and the framework for a new relationship between humanity and the council species taking shape when it was finally over. Sira found herself standing at a viewport overlooking the orbital shipyards where council vessels and human warships now shared the same space. Taejun joined her, looking out at the stars that had been humanity's prison and were now becoming their home again. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I am thinking about grandmother," Sira said. "About how she went back to council space knowing she would never see new soul again, just so we would have someone on the inside when this day came." Taejun was silent for a moment. "She made me promise to look after you," he said. "The last time I saw her on the evacuation ship before she volunteered to return, she grabbed my arm and made me swear that I would find you and keep you safe. She kept her promise to you," Sira said. "She raised me and trained me and prepared me for this, even when she had no way of knowing if the fleet would ever come." "That was who she was," Taejun agreed. "That was who we all had to become, below them." Shuttles were beginning to launch from the fleet, carrying humans who had lived their entire lives in hiding toward the council worlds, where they would finally be able to live freely. "Where will you go now?" Taejun asked. Sira considered the question for a long time before answering. I want to see Earth, she said finally. I know there is nothing left but ruins and scars. But I need to stand on the ground where my family came from. Taejin nodded as if he had expected this answer. The reclamation teams are already preparing their first surveys, he said. The radiation is faded enough that we can begin assessing what might be salvageable. Do you think we can rebuild it? Sira asked. No, Taejin said honestly. Not as it was, but we can make it something new. A memorial and a beginning, and a promise to ourselves that we will never forget what happened there. He put his hand on her shoulder. Your grandmother used to say that humans were not special because we were strong or clever, he said. She said we were special because we never stopped hoping, even when hope seemed impossible. Sira thought about the 8 billion who had died and the millions who had survived, and thousands who had built a fleet in secret while the rest of the galaxy believed they were extinct. She was right. Sira said on the tactical display behind them. She could see the coordinates for Earth being entered into the navigation systems of 100 different ships. The first pilgrimage to a world that had been destroyed but not forgotten. The Council had thought they understood humanity when they ordered the cleansing. They had thought that destroying a planet meant destroying a people. They had thought that fear and fire could erase a species that had crawled out of caves and crossed oceans and reached for the stars. They had been wrong about everything because humans did not survive by being the strongest or the most numerous or the most advanced. They survived by being the most stubborn, the most hopeful, and the most unwilling to accept that anything was truly the end. Sira watched the first ships begin their journey toward Earth, and she made herself a promise. She would stand on that scarred ground and speak the names of everyone her grandmother had remembered. And then she would help build something new in the place. Where everything had been taken away, the Council had tried to destroy humanity instead. They had only taught humans how to endure, and now, finally, humanity had come home. The Council chamber descended into chaos within minutes of the fleet's arrival, with representatives shouting in a dozen different languages and security officers rushing to defensive positions that had never been tested. Sira stood in her usual place near the back and watched as the beings who had spent 47 years congratulating themselves on destroying her people finally understood what fear truly meant. Ambassador Kethrix pushed his way to the central platform, his silver skin pale with shock. This is impossible, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber even without amplification. Our records show that we eliminated every human colony, every refugee ship, every survivor we could find. You found what we wanted you to find, Admiral Yoon Taejon's voice replied. Broadcast from the remembrance into every speaker in the Council complex. You killed millions of our people and told yourselves that the threat was ended. But you never asked what would happen if you were wrong. High Chancellor Vorath stepped forward, his forearms trembling. What do you want? He demanded. I want you to listen, Taejin replied. And then his face appeared on every screen in the chamber. A human man in a military uniform with eyes that held no mercy and no fear. 47 years ago, this council ordered the destruction of Earth without warning, without negotiation, without any attempt to find a peaceful solution. The chamber fell silent as images began appearing alongside Taejin's face. Images of Earth before the attack. Cities and forests and oceans teeming with life. You killed 8 billion people in a single day, Taejin continued. Men and women and children who had done nothing wrong except exist on a world that you considered too dangerous to be allowed. The images changed to show the bombardment itself, captured by satellites that had continued transmitting until the moment they were destroyed. And Sira heard gasps and cries from council members who had never seen the actual footage. You called it the cleansing, Taejin said. You held ceremonies to celebrate your courage and wisdom. You told yourselves that you had saved the galaxy from a death world threat. And all the while you had no idea that we were out here watching and waiting and building. Ketherick stepped forward again, his shock transforming into anger. If you have come to destroy us, then do it, he said. Stop talking and finish what you came here to do. That is exactly what I would expect from someone like you, Teijin replied. Someone who cannot imagine any response to fear except violence. Someone who believes that the only way to deal with a threat is to eliminate it completely. Then what do you want? Ketherick demanded justice, Teijin said. We have not come to repeat your crimes. We have come to ensure that they can never happen again. He outlined his terms clearly and simply. The Council would formally acknowledge the genocide of Earth and the subsequent war crimes committed against human survivors. All humans currently living in Council space would be granted full citizenship with the same rights as any other species. And those responsible for ordering and executing the attack on Earth would be surrendered for trial. You have 24 hours to accept these terms, Teijin said. If you refuse, we will demonstrate exactly how much our capabilities have grown since you last underestimated us. The broadcast ended, and the chamber erupted into argument. Ketherick immediately called for military action, demanding that the Council fleet engage the human ships before they could attack. We outnumber them 2 to 1, he insisted. Our combined forces can overwhelm them if we strike now. But Captain Beak Jisoo had anticipated exactly this response. And when the Council battle group that had been quietly assembling on the far side of the system attempted to launch a surprise attack, the human fleet responded with devastating precision. Sira watched the tactical display in the Council chamber as human weapons tore through the attacking ship shields like they were made of paper. But instead of destroying the vessels, the human gunners targeted engines and weapon systems with surgical accuracy. Within minutes, the entire Council battle group was drifting helplessly in space, disabled but not destroyed. Their crews alive but unable to fight. We could have killed them all. Teijin's voice returned to the chamber speakers. We chose not to, because we are not you. But do not mistake our restraint for weakness. The display showed the human fleet beginning to move, ships repositioning themselves to cover every approach to Vareth Prime. And Sira saw Council military commanders realizing that they were completely outmatched. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields, Teijin continued. Your ships cannot match our speed or maneuverability. And your tactics are based on doctrine that we have spent 50 years learning to defeat. He paused. And when he spoke again, his voice was quieter but no less firm. We did not survive the destruction of our world by being weak or foolish, he said. We survived because we understood that the universe would not give us mercy. So we had to create our own strength. Ketherick looked around the chamber at the other representatives, searching for support. But what he found instead was fear and resignation and the dawning understanding that everything had changed. Councillor Mavan rose slowly from the Oravasi section, the elderly representative moving toward the central platform with obvious pain. I move that we accept the human terms, Mavan said. I move that we acknowledge our crime and face the consequences of what we did 47 years ago. You would surrender to these animals, Ketherick demanded. I would make peace with people we wronged, Mavan replied. Something we should have done before any of this began. The vote was called, and one by one the Council species made their choice. The result was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. The Council would accept the human terms. Sira returned to Vareth Prime 3 weeks after leaving, carrying a small device hidden in her personal effects that allowed her to send quantum-encrypted messages to the fleet. Without any risk of detection, nobody questioned her absence because nobody cared where the human representative went. And this indifference that had once felt like a wound now felt like a weapon. She resumed her duties with the same quiet dignity she had always shown, attending meetings and filing reports and pretending that nothing had changed. But inside she was burning with purpose. Every night she transmitted information about Council fleet movements, defensive installations, and political developments to Director Sha Min-jae, the head of human intelligence operations, who coordinated all information gathering from his post on New Seoul. New Seoul was the name of the world where the survivors had built their new civilization, a planet of mountains and forests that reminded the first generation of the land their ancestors had left behind on Earth. Sarah had spent only a few days there, but she understood why her people had chosen that name and why they had worked so hard to make it a place worth defending. The months passed slowly, each day bringing new intelligence to gather and new dangers to navigate. The Council was planning something. She could feel it in the way certain representatives looked at her and in the whispers that stopped whenever she entered a room. Then the announcement came. The genetic instability of remaining human populations has been well documented. High Chancellor Varth declared to the assembled council, for their own protection and the protection of the species with whom they interact, we propose relocating all humans to designated sanctuary zones where their needs can be properly managed. Sira sat in a chair and listened as the council debated how best to round up the remaining few thousand humans scattered across their space and put them in camps where they could be watched and controlled and eventually forgotten. She transmitted every word of the debate to Director Cha, who forwarded it to Admiral Yoon, who moved up the fleet's timeline by 2 weeks. Meanwhile, on New Seoul, Captain Baek Ji-soo ran her crew through simulation after simulation, practicing maneuvers and tactics until every officer could perform their duties in their sleep. The Council fleet relies on numerical superiority and overwhelming firepower, she told her tactical team during one briefing. They have never faced an enemy who could match them in either category, so they have grown complacent and predictable. Chief Engineer Kwon Do-hyun worked around the clock to ensure that every ship in the fleet was operating at peak efficiency, checking and rechecking systems that had been designed specifically for this moment. We get one chance at this, he told his engineering crews. One chance to show them what humanity can do when we stop running and start fighting back. Back on Varath Prime, Councilor Mavan sought out Sarah in the corridors outside the council chamber, the elderly Oravasi moving with obvious pain. May I speak with you privately? Mavan asked. Sarah led the counselor to her small office, her mind racing through possible reasons for this unexpected approach. I have watched you for many years, Mavan said once the door was closed. I have seen you endure insults and cruelty with grace that I could never match, and I have wondered how you found the strength. I had no other choice, Sira said carefully. There is always a choice, Mavan replied. I know this because I made a choice 47 years ago, and I have regretted it every day since. Sira remained silent, waiting. I voted against the cleansing, Mavan said, and the words seemed to cost the old counselor great effort. I argued that we should find a way to coexist with humanity, that destroying your world would be a crime that would stain us forever. But I was overruled. Why are you telling me this? Sira asked. Because something is happening, Mivan said. Our long-range sensors have detected anomalies at the edge of council space, energy signatures that do not match any known technology, and our military commanders are trying very hard to pretend that everything is normal. Sira kept her face perfectly still. I do not know what is coming, Mivan continued, but I believe that you do, and I want you to know that when the moment arrives, I will not stand against your people again. Sira considered her options and made a decision. I cannot tell you what is happening, she said, but I can tell you that you will understand soon, and when you do, I hope you will remember this conversation. Mivan studied her for a long moment and then nodded slowly. I will remember, the counselor said. And whatever comes, I will try to make what amends I can for the sins of my generation. After Mavan left, Sira transmitted a report to Director Cha, describing the conversation and the counselor's apparent sincerity. The reply came back within hours. We have noted Counselor Mavan's position and will factor it into our planning, but maintain operational security. The fleet moves in 60 days. Sira deleted the message and returned to her duties, counting down the days until everything would change on the 59th day. The Council's early warning network detected a massive energy surge at the edge of the Varus system. An explosion of power that lit up sensors across the entire region. Ambassador Kethrix demanded an immediate investigation, and a battle group of 12 Council warships was dispatched to determine the source of the anomaly. They never returned the next morning. Sira woke to find 1,047 human warships arranged in a perfect sphere around Vareth Prime. Their weapons powered and their shields raised and their hulls gleaming in the light of the system's star. The Council had believed that humanity was broken and scattered and dying. They had been wrong. Sira followed her uncle through corridors that hummed with power and purpose, her mind struggling to process what her eyes were showing her. The ship was enormous, far larger than anything in the Council fleet. And everywhere she looked, she saw humans in uniform going about their duties with quiet efficiency. I thought you were dead, she said, because those were the only words that would come Admiral Yoon. Taejun walked beside her with the easy stride of a man who had spent his entire life aboard starships. His gray hair cut short and his face lined with years of responsibility. That was the intention, he said. When the Council attacked Earth, they believed they had caught us completely by surprise, and we needed them to continue believing that. They passed through a set of heavy doors into a bridge that made Sira gasp with wonder. A vast space filled with holographic displays, showing star charts and fleet positions and tactical data that she could not begin to understand. This is the Remembrance, Taejun said. Flagship of the Reclamation Fleet, and one of over 1,000 warships that the Council does not know exist. Sira turned to face him, her heart pounding so hard that she could feel it in her throat. 1,000. She repeated. 1,047 as of last month, said a woman who approached from the tactical station, her uniform bearing the insignia of a captain, her name tag reading Beek Jisoo. Captain Beek is our tactical officer, Taejun said. She will be involved in many of our discussions going forward. Jisoo gave Sira a small nod of acknowledgement, her expression professional but not unkind. How is this possible? Sarah asked, looking around at the bridge and its crew. The Council hunted down every survivor they could find. They destroyed our colonies one by one. They made sure that humanity would never recover. Taejun gestured for her to follow him to a private briefing room, and once the door closed behind them, he activated a holographic display showing a timeline that stretched back almost 5 decades. Your grandmother never told you the full story, he said. She could not risk it falling into Council hands. But now you need to understand. The display showed Earth as it had been, blue and beautiful and full of life. When we made first contact with the Oravasi 70 years ago, we thought we had found friends among the stars, Taejun said. Instead, we found a galaxy ruled by fear, where any species that grew too quickly was considered a threat to be eliminated. The display changed to show Council meetings, intercepted communications, and intelligence reports. Our government realized within a decade that the Council was preparing to destroy us. Taejun continued. They saw our expansion rate, our adaptability, our refusal to accept our place at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy, and they decided that we could not be allowed to continue. So they attacked, Sira said. So we prepared, Taejun corrected. Project Lighthouse was launched 30 years before the attack. a secret evacuation plan that built hidden relay stations throughout the galaxy, each one capable of guiding ships to a system that did not appear on any council chart. The display showed a map of routes spreading outward from Earth like the roots of a great tree, each one leading to the same distant point. We could not save everyone, Taejun said, and for the first time his voice carried the weight of grief. We did not have enough ships, enough time, enough warning when the final attack came. But we saved over 2 million people. Sira felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. My mother, she asked. Taejun shook his head slowly. Your grandmother reached the evacuation point with you and your mother. But your mother went back to help load more refugees onto the ships. And she was still on the surface when the bombardment began. The grief was old and familiar. But knowing the truth made it somehow sharper. Your grandmother brought you to us, Taejun said. She stayed long enough to make sure you would be cared for. And then she volunteered to return to council space with the refugee group, to maintain the illusion that those were the only survivors. She went back to protect you, Sira whispered. She went back to protect all of us, Taejun said. And she spent the rest of her life gathering intelligence and waiting for the day when you would be old enough to take her place. A door opened and a large man with engineer's tools on his belt entered the room. His face weathered by years of hard work. Admiral, the full drive calibration is complete, he said. We can begin fleet maneuvers whenever you give the order. Thank you, Chief Kwan, Taejun said. Sira, this is Kwan Doyun, our chief engineer and the person most responsible for the technology that makes our fleet possible. Dohyun gave Sira a friendly nod. Your grandmother talked about you constantly, he said. She would be proud to see you here. Sira wiped her eyes and straightened her spine, feeling something shift inside her. What happens now? She asked. Taejun exchanged glances with Jisoo and Dohyun. For 47 years. We have been building ships and training crews and waiting for the right moment, he said. We have developed weapons that the Council cannot match and drives that allow us to cross the galaxy in days instead of weeks. The holographic display changed to show the Remembrance surrounded by hundreds of other warships, each one bristling with weapons and shimmering with power. The moment is almost here, Taejun said. But we need something that only you can provide. What do you need? Sira asked. We need eyes inside the Council, Jisoo said. Someone who can tell us fleet positions, defensive systems and political movements. Someone they trust enough to ignore. Sira understood what they were asking. You want me to go back, she said. We want you to choose, Taejun corrected. You can stay here with us and help prepare for what is coming. Or you can return to Vareth Prime and continue the work your grandmother started. Sira thought about the council chamber and the anniversary ceremony and the casual cruelty of beings who had murdered her people and called it justice. I will go back, she said. And when your ships arrive, I will make sure that every human in council space knows that they are not alone anymore. Taejun put his hand on her shoulder, and she saw the same desperate hope in his eyes that she remembered seeing in her grandmother's face so many years ago. Then we have work to do, he said, and not much time to do it. The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like the inside of a hollow mountain. Its curved walls lined with seats for representatives of 100 different species. And at its center stood a holographic display showing a blue and green world wrapped in white clouds. That world no longer existed. Sira stood in the human section of the chamber, which was really just a single seat near the back, where nobody important had to look at her. And she watched as the council prepared to celebrate the 47th anniversary of what they called the cleansing. She was 29 years old, born on a refugee ship fleeing through the darkness between stars, and she had never set foot on Earth. But she carried its memory like a weight in her chest that never grew lighter. We gathered today to remember the difficult decision that preserved galactic peace announced High Chancellor Varth, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of welcome, his scaled face showing what his species considered a smile. Sarah kept her expression neutral because she had learned long ago that showing emotion only gave them satisfaction. The Velthari ambassador, a tall creature named Kethrix with silver skin and eyes like polished obsidian, rose from his seat and walked to the central platform, and the chamber fell silent with respect. 47 years ago, this council faced a threat unlike any we had encountered before, Kethrix said, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. The humans of Earth had spread to 17 colony worlds in less than 2 centuries, a rate of expansion that would have seen them dominating this region of space. Within another 100 years, Sarah listened to the familiar lies. The same speech she heard every year. The same justification for genocide dressed up in the language of necessity. They came from a death world, Kethrix continued. A planet of extreme temperatures, violent weather, deadly predators, and toxic atmospheres, and they thrived there, which told us everything we needed to know about what they would become. Several council members nodded their various heads and appendages in agreement. We acted to protect ourselves and our children, Kethrix said. We acted to ensure that the galaxy would remain safe for all peaceful species. And though the cost was high, history has proven our wisdom. Sarah wanted to stand up and scream at them, wanted to tell them that the cost was not high for them at all, that they had simply pushed a button and watched from orbit as billions of people burned. But she remained silent because silence was the only weapon she had left. The ceremony continued with speeches from other representatives, each one praising the council's courage and foresight, each one carefully avoiding words like murder and genocide and cowardice. An elderly Oravasi named Mivan caught Sarah's eye from across the chamber, and for just a moment something passed between them that might have been shame or regret or simply acknowledgement of a shared secret. Mivan had been on the council when the vote was taken, and though Sarah did not know how the old creature had voted, she suspected that the weight of that day pressed on Mivan as heavily as the memory of Earth pressed on her when the ceremony finally ended. Sarah made her way through the crowds of delegates who pretended she did not exist, heading toward the small office that served as the human embassy, a room barely large enough for a desk and 2 chairs. She was halfway there when her personal communicator buzzed against her wrist, and when she glanced at the screen, her heart stopped beating for a long, terrible moment. The message contained a single word transmitted on a frequency that had not been used in over 40 years. A frequency that her grandmother had taught her before the old woman died on a refugee ship when Sarah was just 7 years old. Lighthouse. Sarah ducked into a maintenance corridor and leaned against the wall, her hands shaking so badly that she could barely read the rest of the message, which contained nothing but a set of coordinates in a system at the very edge of council space. Her grandmother had told her about Lighthouse only once, late at night on the refugee ship when the other survivors were sleeping, and the old woman had made Sarah swear to never speak of it to anyone. If you ever received this signal, you go, her grandmother had said, her voice barely a whisper. You go, and you do not look back, and you do not tell anyone where you are going. Sarah had been a child then, and she had assumed her grandmother was confused or dreaming or simply too old to know what was real anymore. But she had never forgotten that word or the desperate hope in her grandmother's eyes. For the next 3 weeks, Sarah went about her duties as if nothing had changed, attending council meetings, filing reports that nobody read, and enduring the casual cruelty of beings who considered her presence a reminder of their own mercy. Then she requested leave to visit a human settlement on mining colony, a request that was granted without question because nobody cared where she went as long as she returned to occupy her seat when required. She did not go to the mining colony. Instead, she traveled to the coordinates from the message, a journey that took her to the edge of mapped space and then beyond. to a dead system where no council ship had ever ventured. The system contained nothing but a burned-out star and a handful of frozen moons. And Sierra was beginning to think she had made a terrible mistake. When her sensors detected a ship emerging from behind one of the moons, it was unlike any vessel she had ever seen. Sleek and dark, and somehow predatory in its design. And it matched her course and speed without any apparent effort. Her communicator crackled with static, and then a voice spoke in perfect Korean. A language she had only heard from her grandmother. A language that most humans had stopped speaking decades ago. Yoon Sira, daughter of Yoon Minji, granddaughter of Yoon Sunhee, the voice said. We have been waiting for you. Sira could not speak because her throat had closed up and tears were streaming down her face. Your grandmother made it to us before she died. The voice continued. She told us about you, and she made us promise to watch over you until the time was right. Who are you? Sira finally managed to say, We are what remains, the voice answered. We are what your grandmother helped to save. And we are what the council fears most. The dark ship extended a docking tube toward her vessel. We are the humans who did not die when Earth burned, the voice said. And we have been preparing for this day for 47 years. Sira guided her ship into the docking tube, and as the airlock sealed behind her, she understood that everything she had believed about her people and their place in the galaxy was about to change. The hatch opened, and standing on the other side was a man in a military uniform with her grandmother's eyes and her mother's face. Welcome home. Niece, Admiral Yoon Taejin said. We have much to discuss.